Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, now we know that the cat hairs on Abby and Libby were apparently linked to Richard Allen or to the garden, to a pet buried in the garden. And that is according to an article that has just dropped by the Daily Mail. I'll put a link to that in the description. So we seem to know, besides the bullet, that law enforcement were able to link, or seem to believe that they can link, Richard Allen to the crime through animal hairs, specifically a cat. That cat was buried and then unearthed in the garden. One wonders whether Allen murdered the cat for that reason. Of all the things to keep and get rid of, he keeps the clothing and the gun, but not the cat, ? In Daily Mail's expose, they don't state who their source is, and that is always problematic. Can we really trust this information? But that being the case, some of the allegations do make sense, while others seem a little bit of a stretch. Some of the claims that we made at TCRS, we already suspected, such as, quote, now the sources reveal that Klein has cut a deal with prosecutors, in other words, a plea deal. That's something that we suspected all along, and I think many others as well. Also quoting from the article, the search warrants on Allen's home and property were carried out based on Keegan's testimony. That's also according to this source. So it does seem to have been a quid pro quo arrangement where, in exchange for Keegan giving certain information, perhaps that Richard Allen had a cat, law enforcement would do something, do some favor in terms of some sort of plea deal with Keegan Klein. Bear in mind, his case is sort of sub judice pending right at the moment, and certain charges have already been dismissed. But then there are other claims that seem both more shocking and, who knows, perhaps less credible. It's hard to say. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So according to the article, sources, that's plural, sources close to the investigation have claimed that Allen was acting with at least two other men and was involved in a child sex ring. Now, I must say, I have not, it's quite hard still to take that seriously. Does that mean that sharing images means that one is part of a ring in that sense? Or were they actually acting sort of, were they physically present and doing things on a regular basis? The article is not really clear on that score, but how do we define a child sex ring? Is it sharing images or what? What does it actually involve? Because I'm sure it was that. The article goes on to say, quote, the source claims that Klein, from whose devices police retrieved a slew of pornography related to children, knows Allen, and that the men met when both lived in Peru, roughly 40 miles northwest of Delphi. That also does make sense. The source, as per the article, also claims that both men, Klein and Allen, knew Ron Logan, whom police first pegged as a suspect in the killings after the girls' bodies were found on his property, some 1,400 feet from his home. That's according to the article. Now, I guess it is a fact. Sometimes a crime isn't A or B, but it's a combination. So I think there's a period where we thought, was it Ron Logan? Yes or no. Was it Keegan Klein? Yes or no. Was it Richard Allen? Yes or no. Well, was it maybe one or two of these individuals? Well, why not all three? And that seems to be what's being suggested here. Going back to the article, quote, an FBI search warrant served on Ron Logan's property dated March 17, 2017, revealed that on February 14, the day after the killings, Logan asked a relative to provide him with a false alibi, in other words, to lie for him. He told a cousin to say that a friend had picked him up and taken him to a fish store between 2 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. and that he didn't return home until 5:30 p.m. So that is quite significant that he wanted someone to lie about his whereabouts. The other thing that's quite interesting is cell phone data apparently puts Ron Logan at the scene. Now, how accurately is hard to say. Was he just at home? Was he awaiting Richard Allen? did he actually participate in the crime? Was this a situation of two victims and two perpetrators sort of actively acting out their fantasies on scene? Now, all the men in the story, lived with other people. So what is also being alleged in this article was that this was a botched kidnapping. But then the question is, so where were they going to kidnap the girls to? All the people in the story lived with someone. Keegan Kline lived with his parents. Ron Logan, I think, had people living with him. I suppose it's possible that Ron Logan had some sort of shack in mind. I suppose that is possible. But so if a kidnapping was the strategy, what was Alan going to do? Frog march them all the way to his car? Frog march them all the way to Ron Logan's property? Frog march them all the way into Ron Logan's house? Well, that does appear to be possible. And it does seem as though that was the direction in which he was going. You could either say to frame Ron Logan or because that was the plan. In terms of the article, quote, Logan's alibi was shown to be a lie, and text messages retrieved from his phone showed that he was out of his house and in the vicinity of the murders on the evening of February 13. Evening. The FBI document also noted Logan asked his relatives to lie for him the following morning before the crimes were even discovered. So the only problem I've got with that whole thing is, if Ron Logan had access to their bodies, why not bury them? If he could have done that, why didn't he? So although Logan died at the age of 84 on January 24, 2022, I mean, the other thing is he would have been a 79-year-old committing these crimes. I suppose it's not impossible. It just seems to be somewhat not credible. Anyway, he was never named a suspect. I'm not sure if that's totally true, but he was sort of part of probable cause, I think, that they thought he was a person of interest, put it that way. But according to the article, sources have told Daily Mail that Logan, who had a history of violence against women, was involved. According to the source, investigators believe that the plan had been for Alan to kidnap the girls, bring them to Logan's home, where he and allegedly Kline would do forceful sexual activities on them. They said, quote, the girls were supposed to be kidnapped for the sex ring, but something went wrong. And he, meaning I suppose Alan, knifed and raped one and almost decapitated the other. It doesn't say who he refers to there, but who do you think it refers to? Could only be one of two individuals. So it does appear that there was serious SA in terms of the one victim, and the other was very seriously almost decapitated, apparently. I suppose it's possible that what went wrong, so if it was a botched kidnapping, what went wrong is that one or both girls made a run for it or fought with Alan, or that he struggled to get them where he wanted to take them, and he then took care of the rest of the crime, in a sense, that he decided, okay, well, this is where we're going to do whatever, possibly with Logan present, but it seems as though they don't really think that that is the case, so possibly not. It does seem as if the idea was to get the girls onto Logan's property. Perhaps Kline was waiting to get the all clear to arrive at Logan's house, but that call simply didn't come. And perhaps Logan was waiting for the same, not call, but perhaps a knock on his door. So back to the article, Logan and Kline never met the girls. Police have been tight-lipped about the girls' cause of death, saying that only that there was a lot of blood on the scene. But now Daily Mail has been told that the murder weapon was a knife and that both girls bled out. So that is something that we also speculated about. I don't think it was rocket science. It seems to be true, but again, we really do want to know who the source is. So it's not a surprise. It looks like there was some form of essay and other things that were pretty horrible. And then the last thing I want to quote from the article, quote, speaking well ahead of the probable cause affidavit's release, the source revealed that the girls were killed near the river, information since confirmed, but then moved and posed naked under a tree. So we've got a bit of a Jeffrey Dahmer situation going on here. The FBI search warrant served on Logan's home also included law enforcement's belief that the killer may have taken souvenirs. If there was posing, moving, staging, etc., then taking souvenirs would make sense. Perhaps photos were also taken. Now, one does wonder whether in this image of Bridge Guy, was he walking and was he aroused, knowing what he was about to do? It does make one wonder, given what seems to have happened in this crime, what sort of images could one or both of the girls have sent to any of these men that got them so interested? Well, I think he knew what he was about to do, and he was aroused by the idea and the immediacy of it. According to the Daily Mail, underwear and a cell phone were taken from the scene. I'm not quite sure what that means. I'm assuming those were the souvenirs taken by, who could it be? Alan, probably, if that's what happened here. Keegan Klein, well, that seems a bit unlikely. Or Ron Logan. So who could have taken the souvenirs except for Richard Allen? The issue is, well, if he took a phone from the scene, well, how did they get Bridge Guy's video and audio? Or was there another phone? Was it Abby's phone? According to the source, the killer was wearing a gun on his waistband. So this new source is mum on whether there was SA or not on the other victim, but it seems hard to believe there wasn't. If the crime occurred near the river, perhaps the killer used the water to wash away evidence of himself. What seems to be the case is that the Daily Mail interviewed this person prior to the probable cause affidavit coming out, and then were able to confirm what was in that prior interview, and they're only releasing it now. That seems to be what has happened. In other words, the probable cause affidavit convinced the Daily Mail that this source was accurate and credible. I'm not 100% sure of that. I think maybe 70%, 80% is accurate. It may not all be accurate. Some of it may be accurate. I guess time will tell. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.